Hey there, and welcome to Under the Roof, the official podcast of Baker Roofing Company. I'm Todd Kavanaugh.
And I'm Matt Elban, and we're here to connect the dots between field and office, leadership and crew, values and action.
In each episode, we dive into the stories, lessons, and updates that matter to our team.
From safety and career growth to company milestones and good old-fashioned storytelling, it's all about living out what makes Baker, Baker. Let's get into it.
Today, we have our very first episode of Under the Roof. We're joined by Dylan Baker, and this conversation is particularly meaningful because we're talking about one of the biggest decisions in our company's 110-year history, the transition to employee ownership through our ESOP. But this isn't going to be about technical details or financial structures. Instead, we want to hear from Dylan about what this decision means for our Baker family, our heritage, and our future. Dylan, welcome to Under the Roof.
I appreciate you having me. Excited to be here.
Dylan, let's get things started, kind of warmed up. Simple question. It's a question I love to know the answer to when I'm talking to people. What's the last book you've read, and what did you like about it?
So I am rereading with the residential group a book called The Rebel Allocator, and it's a book that I'd shared with some members of the leadership team here as well. But it does a good job of answering questions about how is your value reflected in your pricing and in the marketplace, and tackling thorny issues of capital allocations from the perspective of people who are not financiers. And it's an engaging and simple read.
It's funny you mentioned that one. I've actually read that, and I actually really enjoyed it. It brought some simplicity to some conversations that in reality can be really difficult and challenging to have, but they break down to some really simple takeaways. So awesome book. Next question. You're a fourth generation Baker Roofing. Your great grandfather, WP, started this company in 1915. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was able to swing by 419 Gale Street, which is where it all kind of started. And it looks way different today than it did back then. And I was able to kind of get out of my truck, stand there for a few minutes, and I kind of started to try to just envision a little bit about maybe what your great grandfather was going through his mind while he was hanging up the sign in his shop. And so when you see that original sign, the Always Good Work sign on the wall in our new building, what goes through your mind?
So the obvious answer is pride. I really believe that sign has been a force for good and has been a true North Star for this business. And Todd, you might remember that 15 years ago, that first time we got together at John's church with Gary McGrath, we're like, well, the first thing we need to do is come up with a mission statement. And there were 15 people getting input, and it just turned into this sort of long, wieldy sentence that tried to probably do too much and connect too many ideas about who we were. And it wasn't until we got on the other side of that process where we just, again, that sign sort of resurfaced. We were, it's there. The message and the mission, it's all right there. And I can't spin words around that and do it any more justice than just actually looking at it and thinking about what it means we'll do. It's been a wonderful constant for this business. And hopefully, you expand on that and all of the fundamentals that we talk about, it dives into all of them. But it really just answers the question, what's the right thing to do here for the customer in a simple way that's easy to process and leads to, I think, good results.
So recently, you told us a story of how your mom, Rebecca, who was the CFO when I started here, probably about 20 years ago or so, and how she would have approved of the ESOP decision. Can you tell us about her and what she valued most about this company?
You want me to get emotional here on this? Okay. I see what's going on. I get better and more composed every time I relate my mother to what's happened here lately. But I mentioned this in the town hall that she was 100% about being in the foxhole with the people that she worked with. I mean, you remember back in the day, it was Fong and Cynthia and Mariana and Gisela, and just that whole crew. And she felt bad that she could not do more to help them. And we at that point we were a growing business, we were evolving, we were pivoting, and some years were really good, but maybe other years were not so good. So sometimes just couldn't really do. What could you do? And she would not have been able to imagine that this company would get to the point where even something like this would be possible, where the business itself could be handed off as something valuable to its employees, but with a roadmap attached to it that will show people how to really hypercharge the retirement benefits that come with an ESOP. I mean, there's real value there. She would love it. I mean, to answer your question, she would. I keep saying this too, but the process of selling this, you go through. There's pride, and maybe there's selfishness, and maybe there's a little bit of privilege that goes along with the fact that your name's out there. Is this the right time? Will there ever be a right time to do this? And so you get a consultant involved and everything starts going really, really quickly, and there's momentum. And sometimes you always find yourself on the outside looking in at all these things that are happening at all these parties. And then you just, everything needs to slow down. But then you think about mom, and mom's like, this is for the greater good. And, there are 1,000+ people whose lives are going to be better for this. Just go, just get this done. And we're on the other side.
I love that. I've heard it was either yourself or some other people that said your mom was the heart. Not to say that your dad wasn't, your dad and your uncle are not on that early board, but your mom was the heart.
Your dad, Frank, your uncle Prentiss were super instrumental in growing this company to kind of what it is today. What lessons would you say you learned from them about what it means to be the steward of something bigger than yourself?
So I'll start with Prentiss. And you guys know Prentiss. He's a man of endless energy, and a lot of the energy he has goes into, and has for a long time has gone into Baker Roofing Company. And he is, again, one of the most energetic people I've ever met, one of the most capable people I've ever known. And so to say that you're going to learn lessons from Prentiss is like saying you're going to learn religion from the Pope. It's just, there's a lot that goes into that. But when I think about Prentiss, what I think about is how this is a people first business, and how the results. He teaches about trust and respect. You have to earn the trust and respect of the people that you employ. You have to earn the trust and respect of the people that you work with, but you have to be seen as someone that everybody around you can trust and respect. He gets there in a number of different ways. He is better than anybody at uncovering a problem and getting into the details and finding it and fixing it. He's great at it, but he always does that with an eye towards the personal connection and from a way of teaching, and not from a way of I gotcha. And that's a very valuable lesson for any organization that you want to endure. And he's the most aggressive businessman I've ever seen. And there's some good lessons to be learned there. Dad is a different person. He is very cerebral, ultra competent. Not that Prentiss is not, but he's the smartest guy in the room. He's the expert on anything that he chooses to be involved in. From growing up in a house with Frank Baker, there's some tough love there that if you didn't work at this company in the 90s and 2000s, you might be surprised to see. But he always encouraged me to be a good steward of this business, even when I did not have ownership in it. And he was always very interested in, I think he was always interested in me working here, but I think that he was always interested in what back then he would have called the second 100 years. So responsibility and stewardship.
Yeah, it's funny. Each of us probably have many stories about those guys, and I can think of simple ones about each one of them. But the funniest one for me with your dad, there was an issue on a building in Richmond, Virginia, and this was probably 10 years ago. And we decided to somehow Frank got involved. And I don't remember exactly how, but he made the trip up to Richmond, Virginia and got up on a step ladder 10 years ago on the side of this building, looking at where the roof and the wall tied together to help figure out what was the exact problem that we needed to solve for this customer. And it blew my mind that someone like that would make that trip 2.5 hours north from Raleigh and get up on a step ladder up on the side of a pretty big building and dig in. And that's kind of how I see both of them, willing to dig in, you know?
That's a great story. And that is those two guys in a nutshell. They will do whatever it takes to get the customer where the customer needs to be at the end of the day. And that means at age 70, both those guys are going to go up this ladder and scale up this 12 and 12 roof. They're going to do it.
So Dylan, you've got this unique perspective as the fourth generation in this company. And as someone who genuinely loves the day-to-day work, as I know that you do, when people ask if you'll miss owning the company, what do you tell them?
It's a complicated answer. So ownership was, I don't want to say that it was a burden, but it was the second that Mark, John, and I acquired Prentiss's interest in the company. You know, I am starting having dreams about, okay, I'm going to sign a document in the wrong place, or I'm going to forget to carry the 2 in some addition calculation, and the whole thing is going to blow up in our faces. And there's 1,000 people that are going to be looking at me. That didn't happen. So that's a great thing. We got through the quick tenure. I never thought about this as anything other than a caretaker job. There are people here that deserve ownership in this business, maybe more than I do. This is a fitting result for our employees. That's a ham-fisted answer.
So your family story, obviously pretty incredible, right? Great grandfather's tin shop, your mom's heart for the people of this company, your dad and uncle's growth vision. This chapter being uniquely yours, how do you want the Dylan Baker chapter to read?
That the company did not die on my watch. There is something, I purchased something of value along with Mark and John, put our little spin on it, maybe left it in a little bit better shape, maybe we didn't, but it was something of value was passed on to the people that helped create that value. And now they have the upside and the day one value of this company in terms of equity value, which will translate into a retirement benefit at some point in time.
So Dylan, you're known for keeping things light. Like I can remember the days of starting meetings with Sporkle. And if you know, you know, for those of you that have been in the Sporkle meetings. But thinking about it, 5 years from now, what do you want people to say about the choice that you guys made in 2025? And really, I know that probably started before 2025. But in 5 years, what do you want your employees to say?
I would hope that the employees realize the opportunity that they have been given. The timing on this is important. We did this year instead of next year for reasons that we're going to talk a lot about in the next few months. We think that starting this year, we're going to go down a path of quick growth, both top line and profitability. And we thought it was right for the employees to be able to share in that growth, not just years 3, 4, and 5 of it, but from the get-go, because we're going to be asking our employees to lead this charge. And the benefit of the 5-year journey in 2030, they are going to own the full increase in equity value from the plan that we are going to roll out.
Yeah. It's almost like for an employee, which is myself and Matt and yourself now too, to be able to look back and say, gosh, that was worth it, right? Those 5 years that we are going to be stretching and running and working harder and working smarter to reach some of those goals that we're going to hear about, to look back and say, man, that was really worth it?
It's my hope that certainly by year 5, the yearly statement that you get with your balance is meaningful to everybody.
Dylan, if your mom could see you right now giving away ownership to take care of the people the way she always wanted to, what do you think the first thing she'd say to you is?
She would be proud of me. She would be proud of Mark. She would be proud of John. And that gives me great comfort. If she said it already, that she was not about Rebecca Baker. She was about my sister and me. She was about Dad. She was not about herself. And she was with the people that she worked with. So she too taught responsibility. She taught selflessness. She taught stewardship. She taught charity.
I was sharing this story with my wife, and she had said, this is probably going to be a really big challenge to communicate. Most people in today's day and age really don't expect a company to truly be looking out for its employees. She was even asking me questions. She's like, well, is this for real? People think probably that there's strings attached. And so for the employees who are thinking, really, this kind of sounds too good to be true, how would you respond to that?
The company takes on, I think, personality of leadership. And there are humble servant leaders here. And I think that's why this benefit now exists. There's genuine care for the people listening to this. There's genuine desire for their lives to be better. Honestly, there's only so much that we can do. We can provide meaningful work that impacts their lives and provides a way for them to help customers with a serious need. The benefit here, I think, will be real. I think it'll be meaningful to people at the end of the day.
Last couple questions. If W.P. Baker could see his great-grandson today, do you think he'd be proud? You think he'd be confused? Or do you think he'd be wondering where you get your sense of humor from?
He was not one of the bald ones. So I think that's probably the first thing he'd look at. Yeah, I'm probably a little bit, I might be a little bit less drunk than him. I don't know. No, he would be, I'm sure, if you were able to conjure me 100 years from now and this thing was still going strong, I would be absolutely elated. And that's what this is about. I mean, we think that this is something special enough to keep going the way that we built it, particularly in this industry. I think this industry cries out for business like ours. So it's worth protecting, and it's worth making sure this thing endures, hopefully into the next century.
So, Dylan, one last question.
Yep.
What's on heavy rotation that you are listening to right now?
Let's just see. Travis Scott just dropped a new album, Midnight, 2 nights ago. So I got to listen to that in my house. It came out at midnight, and Lad's upstairs in his room. He's blasting it.
Awesome. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for taking some time with us and speaking to our employees about this big, exciting, massive change that we're all going through. I think I can speak for all, if not many of them, that I think we are incredibly grateful for the decisions that leadership has made. And I think we're also really, really exciting as to the future of now all of our company. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Matt.
That wraps up this episode of Under the Roof. Thanks for joining us and being part of the Baker Roofing family.
If you liked what you heard, share it with your crew. Hit the follow button and keep the conversation going wherever you work.
We're here to keep you informed, inspired, and included, because the more connected we are, the better we work together.
And as always, we'll leave you with this. We shall do good work, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good work. See you next time.